What are a mother's last words when she is about to die? Do they whisper, "I love you" to their children? Do they beg for forgiveness? Or do they say nothing at all, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions? Throughout history, some of the most shocking death row cases have not belonged to men, but to women. Mothers who once held their children in their arms, only to later destroy their families with their own hands. And when the final moment came, when they stood just minutes away from execution, their words revealed everything: fear, regret, denial, and sometimes even love. Tonight, we open the doors to death row, and we listen closely to those last words. The stories you are about to hear are not from strangers in faraway places, but from mothers, women who carried life inside them, only to take life away. Take Judy Buenoano, known across America as the Black Widow. Her story begins like any other woman's: a marriage, a family, a future. But behind her smile hid a deadly secret. In 1971, Judy poisoned her husband James with arsenic, cashing in on his life insurance. Years later, she drowned her own disabled son during a canoe trip, just for money. She even tried to kill her fiancé with a car bomb. Greed drove every step of her life. And yet, when Judy was finally strapped to the electric chair in 1998, her last actions weren't violent. She received communion with her children, bowed her head, and walked silently to her death. No tears, no screams, just silence. Her children were left with nothing but unanswered questions. Did she ever truly love them? Then there was Velma Barfield, who wore the mask of a caring Southern grandmother but was secretly lacing food and drinks with poison. Her victims included her fiancé, her mother, and others who trusted her. In 1984, she became the first woman executed in the United States after the death penalty was reinstated. Unlike Judy, Velma spoke with her family before her execution. Her final words were filled with gratitude, telling her children that their love had carried her to the end. And yet, how does a child reconcile words of love from a mother who killed her own kin? And perhaps one of the most haunting cases, Betty Lou Beets. She buried her husbands in her backyard, covering their graves with concrete planters and wishing wells. Even her own son testified against her, saying she forced him to help hide the bodies. But when the time came, Betty's last words were simple and filled with fear. "I love you." Words that every child longs to hear, but words that came far too late, spoken by a mother moments before her death in 2000. So, what do these stories show us? That a mother's final words on death row are never ordinary. They are torn between love and guilt, between fear and regret. They remind us that evil does not always look like a monster. It can also look like a mother. And this is only the beginning, because behind every cell door, another story waits. Another mother, another final goodbye. When people hear the word Black Widow, they imagine a deadly spider, small, silent, but lethal to anyone who gets too close. In crime history, the same title was given to women who used love and trust as their weapon. Husbands, lovers, even children, all became victims of the women who were supposed to protect them. The most infamous of these was Judy Buenoano, remembered as Florida's real-life Black Widow. She lived a life of lies, moving from one husband or lover to another, leaving behind a trail of bodies. In 1971, Judy poisoned her husband with arsenic, cleverly disguising the symptoms as a mysterious illness. The doctors believed he had died from complications after Vietnam, and Judy walked away with $240,000 in insurance money. But greed is never satisfied. A few years later, her disabled son, Michael, mysteriously drowned during a canoe trip with Judy. Later, investigators discovered he too had been insured. Still, no one suspected her, until she tried one more time. In 1983, Judy gave her fiancé poisoned vitamins, and when that didn't work fast enough, she wired a car bomb to his vehicle. But this time, the plan failed. He survived the explosion, and police began to dig deeper. Soon, Judy's past came back to life, literally. Bodies were exhumed, traces of arsenic were discovered, and the puzzle pieces fell into place. In 1998, Judy faced the electric chair. She was the first woman executed in Florida in over a century. Reporters waited for a dramatic statement, a confession, a plea for forgiveness. Instead, Judy said nothing. No tears, no apologies, just silence as the current surged through her body. Her silence was perhaps louder than words, because it left her children with no answers at all. But Judy wasn't the only black widow. Across the country in North Carolina, Velma Barfield lived a double life. To neighbors, she was a sweet, church-going woman, but behind closed doors, she was a serial poisoner. Her weapon of choice, arsenic hidden in food and drinks. Her victims included her fiancé, her mother, and several elderly people who trusted her for care. When Velma was finally caught, she shocked the court by confessing to multiple murders. Yet on death row, something changed. She embraced religion, claimed she had found forgiveness, and became known as the death row granny. When her final day came in 1984, she spoke softly to her children, thanking them for standing by her. "I love you all," she said, as the lethal injection entered her veins. Her children left with words of love, but also with the unbearable weight of knowing that love hadn't saved the lives of her victims. And then there was Lou Beets, perhaps the coldest of them all. She buried two of her husbands in her own backyard, covering their graves with a wishing well and flower pots as if nothing had happened. When police uncovered the bodies, her own son testified that Betty had forced him to help hide the evidence. At trial, Betty never showed true remorse. Yet, when she faced the needle in 2000, her last words were simple: "I love you." 3 different women, 3 different final moments, but all carrying the same shadow, the Black Widow curse. They prove that love, when twisted by greed and manipulation, can be deadlier than any weapon. Not every killer mother was motivated by greed. Some were driven by twisted love, unbearable pressure, or the crushing weight of despair. But make no mistake, their choices still ended in death, and their final words revealed hearts torn apart by guilt, denial, and fear. Take the case of Christina Riggs. On the outside, she looked like a devoted nurse and mother of 2. But behind closed doors, Christina battled severe depression and felt her life was spiraling out of control. In 1997, she made a horrifying decision. If she couldn't live with her struggles, she wouldn't let her children live either. She injected her 2 young children with massive doses of potassium chloride, the same chemical used in lethal injections. When the poison didn't kill them fast enough, she smothered them with a pillow. Afterwards, she tried to end her own life, but survived. In court, Christina admitted her crimes and even begged the jury for the death penalty. "I want to die," she said, "because I can't live with what I've done." And the jury granted her wish. On her execution day in 2000, she had only one thing to say: "I love my babies, and I'm going to be with them." Twisted love had driven her to destroy her family, and twisted love was all she had left in the end. Then there was Frances Newton, a woman whose case divided America. In 1987, her husband and 2 children were found shot to death in their home. Investigators discovered she had secretly taken out life insurance policies on all of them just weeks earlier. The evidence pointed directly to Frances. She claimed she was innocent until the very end, insisting someone else had set her up. But in 2005, the state of Texas executed her. Her last words were chilling in their calmness. "I did not kill my family. I am innocent." Her denial left her relatives torn apart. Were they hearing the final defense of a guilty woman, or the last truth of someone wrongly condemned? And then, the story of Teresa Wilson Lewis, a woman whose crime was driven by greed, but whose final words showed only fear and regret. Teresa arranged the murder of her husband and stepson in 2002, hiring 2 men to carry out the shootings. The motive was clear: $500,000 in life insurance. But when the killers revealed that Teresa had offered them money and even given them access to the house, the truth was undeniable. She was sentenced to death, making her the first woman executed in Virginia in nearly a century. On her final night in 2010, Teresa's daughter visited her. In their last conversation, Teresa broke down in tears and said, "I'm so sorry, Kathy. I love you with all my heart. Please forgive me." Moments later, she was strapped to the gurney, her voice trembling as she repeated, "I love you," over and over until the drugs took her away. These cases show us that desperation can twist a mother's love into something unrecognizable. Christina Riggs believed she was saving her children from a harsh world. Frances Newton claimed she never pulled the trigger. Teresa Lewis begged her daughter to forgive her. But no matter their reasons, their children were gone. And their last words could never undo the crimes written in blood. Some mothers killed out of greed. Others claimed it was desperation. But a darker category exists. Women whose crimes showed a level of cruelty so extreme that even seasoned investigators were left haunted. Their last words, often quiet and simple, stand in terrifying contrast to the brutality of their actions. Take Lisa Coleman, a Texas woman convicted in 2004. Her victim was not a stranger. It was her girlfriend's 9-year-old son. The child was locked inside an apartment, starved, beaten, and eventually left to die of malnutrition. When authorities finally found his body, he weighed barely 35 pounds. Neighbors remembered hearing his cries, but no one had imagined the horror happening inside. During her trial, Lisa showed little emotion, but on September 17, 2014, as she lay strapped to the gurney, her last words were strangely tender. She turned to her family and said, "Tell them I love them." The words of a motherly figure, but spoken by someone who had starved a child to death. Then came one of the most shocking cases in American history: Lisa Montgomery. In 2004, Montgomery befriended a pregnant woman online, pretending to be interested in buying a dog. When she visited the victim's home, she strangled her, then used a kitchen knife to cut the unborn baby from her womb. The infant miraculously survived, but the mother was left dead. Lisa Montgomery was arrested shortly after, the baby still in her arms. Her case horrified the nation. When she was executed in January 2021, the first woman to face federal execution in nearly 70 years, witnesses described her as emotionless. Her final words were never spoken. She remained silent, even as the drugs entered her veins. The silence itself became her legacy. Another disturbing case was Patricia Blackmon, who lived in Alabama. In 1999, she murdered her adopted child, just 4 years old, by beating her with a stick, kicking her, and smashing her tiny body. The medical examiner found over 30 injuries, including internal bleeding and fractured bones. Patricia never gave a clear explanation for why she did it. In her final court appearances, she looked down, almost detached. And though she sits on death row to this day, her few public words have been a plea for forgiveness. But forgiveness cannot erase the cruelty etched into the evidence. And who can forget Christy Michelle Scott? In 2008, she set her own house on fire while her 6-year-old son slept inside. Investigators revealed she stood outside, watching as the flames consumed him. Her motive? A life insurance policy. Christy denied everything, claiming it was an accident. But the jury saw otherwise. She received a death sentence in 2009. To this day, she insists on her innocence. Her children's screams, however, tell a different story. These women remind us that sometimes cruelty itself is the motive. There is no desperate excuse, no hidden justification, just pure horror inflicted on the most innocent victims. And when their final moments came, the words they left behind, "I love you," or silence, or claims of innocence, could never erase the truth of what they had done. Unimaginable crimes, unforgivable acts. And yet, mothers, women whose voices once sang lullabies, ended their lives with words of love, regret, or silence. What can we learn from the last words of mothers who killed? Are they cries of love? Are they echoes of guilt? Or are they simply lies whispered in the final moments of life? The truth is, these cases leave us with more questions than answers. Judy Buenoano walked to the electric chair in silence, refusing to admit guilt or offer forgiveness. Velma Barfield spoke tender words of love, even as her victims lay buried from her poisons. Lou Beets said, "I love you," moments before her death, words her children had longed to hear, but words stained by the memory of buried husbands in her backyard. Then came Christina Riggs, whispering that she was going to join her babies in heaven, even though it was her own hands that had ended their lives. Frances Newton swore she was innocent, her voice steady even as the lethal drugs filled her veins. Teresa Lewis wept, begging her daughter for forgiveness, promising her love one last time. And in the darkest chapters, Lisa Coleman, Lisa Montgomery, Patricia Blackmon, Christy Michelle Scott, we see cruelty that defies imagination. Starvation, strangulation, beatings, fire. Yet even in those final hours, their words were soft, sometimes filled with love, sometimes silent. A chilling reminder that evil does not always sound like a monster. Sometimes it sounds like a mother saying, "I love you." But here is the haunting truth. Last words cannot erase the past. They cannot bring back children lost or heal the wounds of families destroyed. They are echoes, powerful, unforgettable, but empty against the weight of reality. For the children who survived, those words will forever be a paradox. How can you believe "I love you" from a mother who poisoned, starved, or suffocated her family? How do you carry those words into the rest of your life? Do they comfort you, or do they haunt you in the silence of every night? And for us, as observers, these cases force us to look at the fragility of love. The bond between mother and child is supposed to be unbreakable, yet here we see it twisted by greed, shattered by despair, or corrupted by cruelty. When that bond breaks, the results are horrifying. Some of these women hoped their last words would redeem them. Others said nothing, leaving silence as their only legacy. But together, their stories leave us with one chilling reflection. The scariest words are not always screams of hate. Sometimes the scariest words are whispered softly, through tears, from a mother on death row saying, "Tell my children I love them." And that is where their stories end. Not with justice fully served, not with forgiveness, but with a lingering question that hangs in the air for all of us. When love and evil collide in the heart of a mother, which one speaks louder in the end?